Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third LiaLusin circle in honor of the Armenian goddesses in 2025. Tonight, we are going to be exploring Astghik, and please forgive my pronunciation. I am very much a novice at speaking and pronouncing Armenian, so I apologize in advance for any bumbling that I do in that realm. But I'm happy to be able to present this work with you all and sort of begin building a small community around devotion to the Armenian goddesses and the spirits of our ancestors. So the program tonight, we will start by calling in the elemental guardians to help build our circle, do a little honoring of the ancestors, offer a prayer of awakening to the goddesses, and then we'll go into a little bit of history, a little bit of folklore on Astghik, the little star and goddess of love in the Armenian pantheon. And then Haley is going to come in and tell us a little bit about the holiday of Vardavar and some associated folk tales. And then when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Astghik's temple at Astghik, and then some points of personal practice and association that I've made in my research and my own practice with the goddesses. And then we'll close our recording and come back for a little chat and a little divination. Baravdez, spirits of the east, guardians of air, Sovinar's thunder, wind, song, and breath, we call and welcome you to our circle tonight. Baravdez, spirits of the south, guardians of fire, the sacred sun, the hearth, and spark of life, we call and welcome you to our circle tonight. Baravdez, spirits of the west, guardians of water, Lake Sevan, the inland seas, rivers, and blood, we call and welcome you to our circle tonight. Baravdez, spirits of the north, guardians of earth, Mount Ararat, the Caucasus, stone and bone, we call and welcome you to our circle tonight. With respect and honor, blessed spirits of the land, bear witness and guard us as we awaken our ancestral wisdom and the timeless magic of our sacred goddesses. And now we honor our ancestors. If you haven't done so yet, take a moment to prepare your space, light a candle for the goddesses, and pour a little fresh water for your ancestors. Let's just give a little moment to orient for that. And I do suggest that you come prepared with a list of your ancestors to speak their names at this point in the circle. Baravdez, ancestors and beloved dead, tonight we lift your names to the heavens with the full moon as our witness. May the goddesses guide us to heal our traumas and mend our hearts, to witness our joys and join in our laughter, blessing us as we weave a new tapestry of sacred magical community. Prayer of Awakening. O beautiful, immortal goddesses of Armenia, we call to you, ancestors of blood, ancestors of spirit. We gather under this full moon, your scattered children, yearning to return to reclaim the lineage of our magic. Once you flourished in our hearts and in the land, long since eclipsed by war, conquest, and patriarchy. Let us lift the veil of Christianity that has fallen so heavily and return you to the bright light of the sacred sun. With love and honor, we respect our family's faith, and with reverence, seek to unearth its tender roots. Walking side by side on these paths of love and spirit, may we each find the divine in her myriad faces. O beautiful and immortal goddesses of Armenia, rise up from the soil, the seas, and the sands of time. Return to us radiant, whole, and exalted in love. May your magic ignite in the flaming of the rose. Astghik, goddess of love, fertility, and the sacred waters. The little star. The name Astghik is a compound of the word Astghik, meaning star, and the diminutive suffix ik, giving the goddess's name as little star. Like Aphrodite, Ishtar, and Astarte, Astghik is associated with the planet Venus, as many ancient pantheons were aligned with the 7 known planets or wandering stars. Some sources claim Astghik was originally a celestial creatrix goddess, evolving over time with the goddesses of other peoples, moving into and through Armenia, into the more specific role described by Koronatsi, Agathangelos, and others. Like Nane, Astghik is thought to have been brought from Mesopotamia with the worship of Inanna Ishtar. Though Astghik is the earliest documented Armenian name of a goddess of love and fertility, it's possible that when Inanna Ishtar found her way to Armenia, she was syncretized with an older indigenous goddess or spirit. Vahan M. Kurchian states in his History of Armenia that Astghik is a translation of the Syrian goddess Beldi. So no goddesses called Beldi are known, but the name Mesopotamian Belet or Belit translates to lady, or the feminine counterpart to Bel, meaning lord or god. So this basically translates to a goddess consort or sovereign. There are many genitive variations of Belet, such as Belet Ili, meaning creatrix or lady of the gods. In the oldest origin story of the Armenians, the patriarch Haik defeats the Babylonian god king Bel, bringing his tribe back to the land of his birth and establishing their territory in the highlands of Armenia. Bel's consort was likely a version of Belet, and this title of lady may have influenced the shaping of Astghik's mythology. Goddess of Love. Over time, as the Armenian pantheon was infused with Hellenistic influences, Astghik's mythology and character became more closely aligned with other goddesses of love and fertility in the Near East. She was known by the Greeks, the primary historians and ethnographers of the ancient world, as the Armenian Aphrodite, taking on many of the same symbols and qualities as her Greek and Syrian influences, such as roses, doves, and sacred waters. Astghik was recognized as the divine lover and goddess in relationship with her consort Bahag, who embodied the archetype of the solar sun and dragon slayer. Both Aphrodite and her Roman counterpart Venus were espoused to fire gods as smiths, but theirs were not known to be happy unions. In contrast, Astghik and Vahan represented the balanced union of water and fire, a sacred alchemical marriage. All right, so I'm gonna pause our recording for a moment so that I can hand over the reins to Haley to talk to us about Vardavar.
So I think most of us have some form of comprehension relating to Vardavar. Um, so typically, yeah, it's a holiday that's still celebrated today, but it is well known to be a pre-Christian holiday. It was dedicated to the goddess Astghik, as it's known for you dump water on people and you release doves. These are, as was explained previously, these are heavily her associations. Um, and it was definitely a thing to represent, calling to continue to have water for our people. And as water is really sacred, especially in Armenian culture, to this day, even if you're walking in the streets of Yerevan, there's water fountains everywhere, because of that importance. Like even small things like that are representations of our vernacular-based history of how we foretold things historically. And yeah, so celebrate in the form of dumping water on one another. In the Christian tradition, it's well known to be celebration of the Transfiguration of Jesus, being said approximately 14 weeks after Easter. Um, One thing that is interesting is with Christianity, a lot of focus in Christianity is like cleansing, spiritual cleansing. And so that is almost like a new form of association that was added to this holiday through Christianity. It has now added another form of association. You get dumped on, it's cleansing of, bad things in your life. In Christianity, be considered, cleansing of sin, things like that. It's a form of spiritual bath that you do for your whole community all at once in a kind of more chaotic and very fun nature. In pre-Christian tradition, yeah, sorry, my camera froze for a second. In pre-Christian tradition, Astghik, as was explained, is associated with roses, and Vart also somewhat meaning rose. Um, these traditions still kind of live on, and it shows how heavily it was involved and still is involved. And also in the early Christian days, there were still plenty of polytheists walking around. It wasn't like just an overnight thing. People were celebrating Vardavar together. That is something that I don't feel like is discussed enough. The Christian side and pre-Christian practitioners, they practice it side by side for different traditions. That's what I mean when I'm saying like for the love of community, it is for all different forms of community, even religiously different communities. Um, and in the pre-Christian tradition, it was probably a form of offering um, to the gods. Is a lot of the time, you make sacrifice to gain more of something. In this situation, it is you sacrifice water to continue to have water, to continue to have fresh water, especially within the springs. Um, and it was inspired by the moon cycle. It was similar to Transfiguration of Jesus. It's approximately 14 weeks after the spring equinox. And another folktale is of Akhtamar. Um, Tamar is a woman that is a relatively interesting archetype that we don't see a lot. If you know about archetypes, the Prince Charming, the hero, things like that. Um, Archetypes are really important when it comes to mythos. And, I compare it to Romeo and Juliet, the story. So it is a story of a noblewoman who is a princess who she would light a fire for her lover to swim to her island that she was trapped on, held there by her father. And one day she would the flame would be taken out by her father and his servants, and he would unfortunately drown in the lake. And it is said that his last word that you can see on his lips is her name, or Akhtanmar. Um, This is, well, very well known to be like a tragedy, a romantic tragedy. It's also a political story, as the politics of a man in power could not dare to allow someone of lower class, essentially demeaning his daughter, but never allowing her to marry at all. He saw it as a form of political control over her and also could be seen as a form of patriarchy. And this is the island that it takes place, so I know a lot of our egos would think we could swim it. No, we can't. Um, and if you think about it, like these are taken during a time of light pollution. This story would take place where the only light you literally had was the stars. And so a flame, even a mile away, could be visible to a certain degree, especially with how flat this region is besides the mountains over there. Like from the island to the water, you could see across. So, to this day, this story kind of holds places like um, fighting for that light, fighting for your love, swimming towards it, even if it's super scary. This statue is of her, of Damar, as she continued to wait for the love of her life. And this is the island. It's very beautiful. There is now a church there, which is interesting because the only thing that was there in the story is the tower she's being held in. And this story kind of actually reminds me of a real story, that happened historically, to kind of only tell a small part of it, was of Queen Piransam, or a woman known as the Warrior Queen. She, um, she was her and her husband were in love. He was Prince Gnell or Gnellis, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And during a time of just arranged marriage was just nothing political, they were truly in love, and they were both noble as well, but they were truly in love. And it was on Vardavar, the day that they're actually amongst the people. The people loved these two. They wanted them to rule together. His cousin was jealous and wanted to be with her, and so he had tricked the king to order Gnell's execution in the accusation of treason. And so on the day of Vardavar would be this day of love and all that, like this day of celebrating each other, he was taken from her. And it was that day that like everything in her story starts to kind of spiral. But it seems like, both in fact and even folklore, stories of love and tragedy kind of have a lot of repetition in Armenian culture. And the last thing I'm going to show is this photo I found, which from this website that tells one of the stories. It gives us a little bit of an insight into how it can relate back to Astghik. So Astghik is a woman that is associated with the springs, with water, fresh water, drinkable water. But she's also associated with the Vishap, or the Vishap, the Vishap, that are also associated with water, chaotic water in particular. And the love of her life is associated with fire, lightning, and also known as the Dragon Reaper. And so in this photo, you can see like she's on one side holding the flame of her love, and he's on the other side. And the dragons is their main opposition, or the Vishap are their main opposition. So a lot of stories, I mean, you can even see the doves here is kind of a representation of Astghik in of itself. So even though I know like this is just like an image relating to the story of Akhtamar, this photo can really show its relation back to Astghik, and so that's why I wanted to include it. Um, the separation between love and water, something of Astghik, and Akhtamar, um, its symbolization of love and chaos is something that I think was really interesting. And yeah, that is the story of Akhtamar and a little bit of an introduction to Vardavar.
Thank you so much, Haley. Would you
Okay.
kindly pause the recording?
Yeah.
And we're back. So now we're gonna do a little bit of exploration of Astghik, then back in the heyday of the pre-Christian Armenian religion, and now points of personal practice. Astghik's temple at Ashtishat. The principal temple of Astghik was located at Ashteshat or Taron, where it was part of a complex that included temples to her lover Vahang and Anahit. Ancient Ashteshat is located approximately at the city of Yucetepe in the Muş region of modern-day eastern Turkey, about 80 kilometers west of Lake Van. It was a Hellenistic temple likely established between the 4th century BCE and the 1st century CE. Some sources claim that her temple was known as the bedroom of Vahagan. One myth describes how the beautiful Astghik loved to bathe in a local stream. This habit was so renowned that amorous young men would light fires nearby in order to see her more clearly. When the goddess learned of this, she caused a thick mist to rise from the waters, obscuring her form from their sight. The Armenian word meshush, meaning mist, evolved into the modern name of the province of Muş. Astghik in situ. So as you can see on the map here, the principal temple of Astghik was located at Ashteshat, which is indicated by the red pin right here. So west of Lake Van, up here we have Lake Sevan. There's also mention of another temple to her that existed in a place called Artamet. So I believe the site in question is called Edremit in Turkish and is located on the southeastern shore of Lake Van, about 20 kilometers from the city of Van, and that is located here. There are modern cities of Artamet in Armenia, but according to the brief descriptions of where it's situated near Lake Van, I don't think that those modern towns are referring to the same place. So Maiden's Castle is the translation of Edremit Kizkalisi, and it is within the historic territory of Urartu in the Lake Van Basin. So again, that's the blue pin here. Edremit was famed for its springs, gardens, and orchards, and nearby is a site called Donamech Selalesi, or Bendek Waterfall. It certainly sounds like an area that could have featured a temple or sanctuary dedicated to Astghik in the Hellenistic period. There is also mention of a temple to Astghik on or near a mountain called Palati to the southwest of Lake Van, but Palati does not appear on any modern maps. So this could possibly refer to Mount Artos, which is located near the southern shore of Lake Van, approximately here, and Artos is visible from Aktamar Island, which I think even in Haley's presentation, we saw that Mount Artos in one of those photos. So here in the lower right, we have Bendek Waterfall, which is just gorgeous. I can absolutely see the goddess presiding over those beautiful waters. The waters of Astghik. In the Kostrov Reserve Forest, there are 4 waterfalls in close proximity named after Astghik and Vahagan. The falls are located along a hiking trail that connects the Garni Temple and St. Stephanos Monastery. So this one on the left here is one of the falls of Vahagan, and the one on the right is one of the falls of Astghik. So can't you just picture making an offering to the goddess here, having her bathing in the falls? I think they're just stunning. And then this is a really interesting piece. Some of you may have seen this kind of floating around the internet. This is a modern mosaic, The Birth of Astghik by Garnik Sumbatian. This was made in 1982, and it is located in an abandoned Soviet-era hotel near Lake Sevan. So it's actually this and many other art installations are in this sort of abandoned, overgrown hotel, and it's sort of just reachable by exploring in the wilds of the outskirts. And that piece was also inspired by Botticelli's Birth of Venus. All right, so now the points of personal practice. So these are my own associations. Some of them are based in historical precedent, but the Materia Magica are primarily mine. So I'm sharing this as, an inspiration for you if this is something that you'd like to work into your own practice. You can use my suggestions here as kind of a jumping off point. So stones of blue, azurite and turquoise. I associate Astghik with classic stones of blue for her association with the sacred waters as well as the sky and its stars. Lapis armenus is a deep blue stone, also known as azurite, somewhat resembling lapis lazuli but slightly softer, lighter, and warmer in tone. This mineral, found in the highlands of Armenia, has been used for centuries in jewelry, as a pigment, and even in folk medicine as a remedy for melancholy. Its deep blue hue was likened to the starry sky, and hence it was thought to lift the spirits. Azurite is aligned with the third eye chakra, enhancing intuition, psychic abilities, and spiritual insight. Edgar Cayce was said to use azurite to assist in his visionary work. And turquoise. Turquoise was prized and widely traded in the ancient world. The oldest known mines located in the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt and the Neyshabur turquoise mine in northeast Iran. The Neyshabur mine has been in use for more or less continuously since the 4th millennium BCE and has been the primary source of turquoise in the Near East for at least 1,000 years. Persian turquoise has been discovered in ancient graves in Turkestan and across the Caucasus region dating back to the 1st through 3rd century CE. Armenia's long cultural history with Persia, including the adoption of Persian Zoroastrianism into its indigenous religion, fostered the vibrant trade and use of turquoise in jewelry and decorative arts. And on to the botanicals, the rose, the iconic symbol of Astghik. The rose is unparalleled as a flower of love, beauty, and divinity across cultures worldwide. The queen of all flowers, in Armenia, the rose is inseparable from the goddess Astghik. In medicine, roses are nutrient-rich, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and antidepressant. They protect tissue against free radicals, soothe digestive complaints, and ease hormonal imbalances. In magic, the rose is the quintessential flower of love. Astghik was said to throw rose petals and rose water into the waters during Vardavar in order to spread love across the land. In later folklore, Astghik was running to the aid of Vahagan, who was wounded in battle when she stepped on some thorny white roses. Her blood turned the roses red, a symbol of her love and personal sacrifice. The dove. The dove is a ubiquitous symbol of the goddess of love in the ancient Near East. Doves are graceful, gentle, affectionate, and known to mate for life. They are also prolific breeders, which makes them potent symbols of fertility in mythology and folk magic. Doves were seen as messengers and familiars of the goddess, representing both passionate love and purity of heart, which was later appropriated into Christian iconography as symbolic of peace, martyrdom, and the Holy Spirit. Today, the dove's symbolism in Armenia includes the idea of soulmates in love, as well as an emblem of survival and remembrance of the genocide. Astghik's familiar is the dove, and traditional festivities at Vardavar include the release of doves back into the wild. Ancient dove cotes were found in the ruins of the city of Ani, though when these were established is unclear. The Eurasian collared dove and the rock dove are year-round residents of Armenia, along with several other less common species. So the pictures here, the top one is the rock dove, and the lower one is the Eurasian collared dove. Did you know that doves and pigeons are genetically identical? The goddess presides even in the most mundane of environments, so making an offering to your local pigeon population would be a loving gesture. Very little in the way of religious art from the pre-Christian era has survived the centuries in Armenia and its historic territories. The rare statues and votives of goddesses that have been unearthed are often identified as Aphrodite or Ishtar, but we can tentatively identify some of them as Astghik, knowing their shared provenance, symbols, and qualities. So these are just a few pictures of artifacts depicted with doves or wings from the Hellenistic Near East. The Canaanite goddess Asherah and the Phoenician Astarte are also sometimes depicted with doves. So on the left and right here, we have Cypriot depictions of Aphrodite holding a dove beneath her breasts. This is a very typical iconography of Aphrodite from this period. And then at the center there, we have a tiny stone white dove. This was found with some other animal votives in Mesopotamia, but this is actually very tiny. It's only an inch or so large. So it's definitely meant to be an offering, probably at the goddess's altar at a temple. And then this very interesting figure here in the middle bottom, this is it's tentatively identified as the Urartian winged goddess Tushpoya, wife of the solar god Shavini. She's also the tutelary goddess of the city of Tushpa. So just a really interesting depiction. There's actually hanging hardware included on this statue that you can't see in this photo, but it was meant to be suspended, potentially in a temple or in some other sacred architecture. So here the goddess is depicted as a winged being, a winged spirit, possibly a dove or other sacred bird. Just a really interesting tie-in to these ancient Near East goddesses. And then similar to the figure identified as Tushpoya, this illustration of a winged bronze goddess found in Van is explained in this 20th century book as Semiramis in the form of a dove, or possibly an Urartian cognate of Ishtar. The Assyrian Semiramis was said to be a daughter of Derkito, which is also identified as the goddess Atargatis, who abandoned the child before drowning herself. The infant Semiramis was fed by doves until she was found and adopted by a shepherd. So I think this is also a really fascinating tie-in to Tushpoya and the other goddesses depicted with or as doves from this period. And then, just as kind of a final note, these are not doves, but dove adjacent. The shamshik is a motif in Armenian folk art depicting the sritikakav, I'm sure I butchered that, or the heart partridge. This motif was popular in Western Armenian folk costume and associated with folk traditions and wedding rituals. While they are occasionally referred to as doves, The shamshiks, or partridges, seem to embody a similar symbolic role in their association with love, loyalty, and partnership. Perhaps the doves of Astghik inspired the later Christian tradition of the partridge as a tangible symbol of love and commitment in traditional Armenian wedding attire. And here I just wanted to share some modern art depicting Astghik. So on the left, this is by Andranik, a Satrian. He has an Instagram where you can see a lot more of his art. I can probably put that link in the chat if anyone's interested. And then Astghik by Joseph Sarkisian. I shared one of his paintings last month as well of Nane. But you can see he really incorporates a lot of that ancient Near Eastern iconography, not just Armenian, but Mesopotamian, Minoan, etc. So it's really, these goddesses sort of existed in an ecosystem of iconography, culture, symbolism, and ritual. And then finally, I love this piece by Natalie Miller. She is an Armenian artist who I think is also local to the East Coast. I love her vibe. She has a very kind of vintage 70s fashion vibe. So I love this one with the doves and the rosebud. Connecting with Astghik, the sacred waters. Speak prayers and make offerings at living water sources, especially rivers, lakes, streams, and springs. You can also gather water in small vials to use for purifications and blessings. Gather some fresh spring water, add a splash of rose water and a few rose petals for a beautiful blessing or offering. Cleanse yourself and your belongings with this water. You can even put it into a mister bottle and use it as a blessing mist. If you want this special water to last longer, you can add up to 20% of vodka or other pure spirits to the bottle just to keep it from gathering any sort of bacteria that might have jumped on it. Scrying or divination. Scrying is the meditative practice of seeing into a mirror, pool, water, or other reflective surface to receive messages and insights. In goddess spirituality, we say that all water is one water, and by this we mean that water connects all beings in the web of life in the cosmos, and therefore it can translate images, memories, messages, and stories across vast distances of time and space. Pray to the water to open your vision and see what comes through. You could even hold a small piece of azurite during your scrying session to open your psychic senses and ask Astghik to guide your vision. And this image on the right here is Astghik as the star in the Armenian Tarot by Pambak Games. If you don't know about the Armenian Tarot yet, you've got to follow Pambak Games on Instagram. I believe they finished the deck, but life sort of got in the way. I know the main artist moved from Armenia to the US, so I think everything got a little delayed. But it's a beautiful project, and you should definitely have a look. And this last piece here, I got from the internet from our friend Surin. This is a poem that was posted on Facebook by Harut Arakelian, who uses the title of priest or high priest in his postings. So Surin translated this for us well, for himself and for the community. But I wanted to share it. I think it's a really beautiful poem to Astghik, and yeah, I think it's inspiring. Greetings to you, Astghik, goddess of kindness, mistress of Vahan. Blessed are you, daughter of Armenia, and blessed is your unselfish love. Shining queen, Vardher, rose goddess, give me the breath of love, grant the longing of love, so that I can fly into love like you, and sing a new song from that sky. My unforgettable love, praise be to the loving Astghik, praise be to the loving Vahan. And that is the end of the educational part of our circle tonight. So we'll just close that and close the recorded part of the circle with this little sealing prayer. May the goddesses rise and the land be healed. May the ancestors preside as our magic is sealed. And with that, I thank you all for coming tonight, those of you that are watching later, and hopefully you'll be able to join us next month in August. We will be honoring Anahit and Navasard for our full moon circle. So with that, I thank you all and say good night.